right, okay, let's get started. Hello, and welcome to episode 53 of Offset. My name is Ryan Selvy, and I'm your host. Offset is the show where we bring on artists and we talk about their process, their work, their inspiration, and we ask them a bunch of questions from the chat. This is recorded in a live stream that goes to both YouTube and Behance, but we like to make it as rewatchable as possible. So if you're watching the replay, thanks for being here. Or excited to get into today's guest. I'm very excited for today to be joined by Amber Asay, and she has a lot to talk to herself about. And we have a whole segment where someone gets to go through their little elevator pitch. So I don't want to talk too much on her behalf. I want to bring her in for it. But if you guys have questions as we go throughout the show, please throw them in the chat and I will relay them to her. Hello to a bunch of people that are already here. Thank you, Wade, for being our moderator. And hello to Kevin and Oliver and Bruce. Also to Robert and Mike. Thank you for sticking around from last stream. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Amber. Hi, Amber. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. How are you doing today?
Great.
Where are you joining us from?
I am in LA.
Oh, cool. So you're on the other side of the country. It's just getting your morning started off right, I hope. We are broadcasting from Brooklyn, so opposite sides of the country, but that shouldn't be a problem for us. So we're going to start off with our elevator pitch, which is what you would guess, just an elevator pitch of what you would say as you're going up an elevator and you run into someone who asks, "What do you do?" All right, so I have a little bit of timer here that I can set to 1 minute. And
Okay.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to 1 minute, and I'm going to give you the stage to just kind of give yourself an introduction, what you do, what you're about, where you're from, and then we can look at your work right after that. So are you ready?
Great. Yeah.
All right, ready, set, go.
Hi. How's your day? My name's Amber. I am a graphic designer and I own a small studio called Nice People. It's a very small team of about 10 people, and we work on anything from branding to packaging and website design. I started the studio about 6 or 7 years ago. I quit my design day job, my 9-to-5 job, and decided to go out on my own and start my own studio. And so we worked with some really impressive clients like Poosh and Studio McGee, and we work on projects all the time on the daily, and I'm checking in with my team all the time, checking their work, and I love what I do. Can't complain.
All right, with 10 seconds to spare, that was wonderful. I'm really excited to talk to you about Nice People, and and your experience also of kind of creating your own business and running your own business, and also kind of navigating that as also being an artist. And so we're going to actually first hop into our very first part, which is let's look at your work.
Great.
Let's look at your work. So you said that Nice People was founded only just a few years ago. Do you want to do a little bit more about? I know you're LA based and you create wellness and lifestyle brands with personality and heart. We're going to go ahead and just pull up your Behance for you here. And I think it has a really good selection of case studies that we can kind of flip through. Is there anyone in particular that you want to check out?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, the unwash is kind of a favorite on Behance. It kind of seems to be a top favorite from a lot of people who've liked it and commented on it. And that always catches me by surprise. You never know what the general public is going to love. And so it was kind of fun to see that with this one. It's actually a website for kind of like a shopping assistant website where it covers all sorts of brands and calls out the things that they're doing right, like being sustainable or ethical or They're really good at like diversity, or maybe they're owned by a woman or Black owned or whatever it might be. And so we created this tagging system, this color kind of a system for this client, so that there's a icon and a color and a label for each of those different call outs for every brand. And it's the way that we built the site is you can click on that tag and see all the brands that are doing that thing too, all the women-owned brands, all the sustainable brands, or whatever it might be. And so it's been a really fun project, pretty playful and youthful, and definitely speaking to a younger audience where this kind of stuff matters to them, and they're really wanting to do the research and find out which brands they should spend their money towards.
And I love that because there is something to be said about something that's playful but still has elegance. Because a lot of times I think these bright colors and youthful feel can make things feel immature. But even though it's for a younger audience and it accesses these bright colors down here, I still feel like it's a very mature and dignified approach to organization and branding, which is really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say, I mean, that's definitely an area of focus for all the projects that we work on. We try to create something that feels like it has character and that feels unique to the brand and to the audience that it's going to speak to. And so a lot of our projects feel very different from one another because it really is keeping those things in mind. And we really like to design with character so that it all doesn't feel like, bland black and white brands.
Yeah, and it's hard to stand out. I mean, especially that and with branding. But whenever trends happen, people kind of gravitate towards the same thing, and it's always interesting to be able to see when you're able to kind of allude to fun things, but still have your own piece of personality in there.
Yeah.
Over in the chat, Arshia is saying excellent work. She's asking about the name Nice People. How did you come up with the name Nice People?
Oh, it's a very layered name. I feel like it has a lot of meaning. The big reason why I named it Nice People was I wanted something that was not only memorable, but kind of a call to action. I think one thing that as designers we probably all face and have in common is we're sometimes experiencing the clients who it's kind of like end of the world crisis and feels like someone's life is on the line with some of these projects when it doesn't have to be. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a passion project. And really, at the end of the day, we view ourselves as nice people and we only want to work with nice people. And so I would say when those two worlds collide, magic happens. And so we're always really calling that out as an important ethos for our studio, and making sure that we're only bringing in and only the clients we really want to work with are really feeling that energy and coming towards us because they really like that idea.
That's really elegant, and I like that idea because you're going to only create really great work when the work is kind of mutually beneficial, and the idea is that you both have an investment into making something nice. So I think
Yeah,
it's a great name. It's
thank you.
approachable.
And
Um,
in an AI world too, I mean, I constantly love that it's human focused and that there's people involved, because really that's what our process is all about. We're always on calls with clients and, FaceTime with clients. And so it feels like a very human process.
yeah, agreed. And that's only going to become more valuable over time,
Yeah.
unfortunately and unfortunately.
Hmm.
And then let's just look at one more product real quick because I really like the elegance of this jewelry company, Kristin Coffin. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah. So this is an engagement ring brand, and they have such an iconic design and style to their engagement rings, very elaborate and colorful. They really love to emphasize colorful engagement rings. And so we really leaned into that and thought, okay, what kind of color can we bring into this while also still bringing in gold tones everywhere, and creating something that feels very elevated, but also different from your average engagement ring brand. And so that would hopefully speak to an audience who wants something slightly different, who doesn't want the status quo engagement ring. And then the unboxing experience we came up with for this brand too is a very elaborate unboxing experience. There's a little ring box in the middle that says Forever Yours on it. And it's gold foil in a little drawer box with a little ribbon tab. And then there's a magnetic closure box. And we knew that they had a
Oh,
lot of,
love a magnetic box.
right? Yeah. But like, if you are that kind of OCD person that just loves the satisfaction of it just closing on you, it's just like, it's hard to describe. But if
No,
you'll
it goes a long
notice
way. It's very
that,
simple, but it's very, very
yeah.
impactful.
And then the teal backing is actually an envelope with all of their certifications for their gemstones and all the other documents and care documents that we knew would be going with every ring too. So we made sure that it was all enclosed in this nice little envelope and really kept together and organized.
And it's really thoughtful because obviously these are things that are very important to people that people hold on to literally the rest of their life, hand down between generations. Like it's something that it could easily kind of just be, thrown in there and kind of be like, oh, this is what it is. But the idea that you've taken the time to really give it its time in the light that it deserves is really admirable. And then
Thank
also, I
you.
really love your source of texture and this feeling of just like softness, but luxury with it. I love the color here too. Feels very reminiscent of colors I would also really associate with kind of this. It's like velvet, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, she already came to us with these velvet ring boxes. They're like
mhm.
octagonal or whatever, and she said, "We're gonna keep these boxes. These are like one of the must-haves that we wanna keep with this rebrand." And so we made this beautiful little KC monogram that's now gold foiled on top of that little velvet box. So that was kind of a fun, element to add
How
to
does
the
that
brand
even
as well.
work? Is it like
It's a
is it put
really
on there before?
shiny, it kind of feels like a sticker.
Mhm.
Um, so it's a really shiny, like, seal that's, I think, really just glued onto the velvet.
Wow, but it seems like it pushes down the rest of the velvet so that it feels
Yeah,
almost like embossed kind of.
yeah, like, you can kinda see some of the velvet popping up through the cracks, which is kind of fun textural moment too.
And this came from the idea of your studio? You guys are kind of like just experimenting and kind of landed on this?
Yeah, well, the velvet box was one of it's kind of fun when you have a creative brief and you know what's gonna stay and what can go. So
Yeah.
this was one of the things that was gonna stay. So designing around that is a really nice problem-solving process, for
But she
every
didn't have the
project.
insignia, right? You guys put the insignia onto the box.
Yes, yeah.
So, kind of like adding that element on top of it.
Mhm.
But definitely agree. It's cool to have those parameters that you have to work with.
Yes.
Lisa's loving the wildflowers, and also the subtle flower patterns that then also complement them.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it.
I'm so excited about this packaging, and that's why I wanted to talk about this one. But I am even more so excited to talk about this one because we have a segment where we like to look at old work and then compare it to new work. And I'd love to do that because I feel like it's only a natural progression. So let's do from this to that.
From this to that.
Now, you were kind enough to send over some stuff that we were able to then actually hop in together so we can look at them side by side. And I'm going to go ahead and pull them up. But how long have you been designing for?
I've been designing for 14 years now that we're in 2024. So it's been 14 years. Went to design school and was a working student designing while I was learning, which is a really interesting thing to navigate. You're learning design and working as a designer at the same time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's been 14 years.
Congratulations. I mean, it definitely shows in your experience. But this is a piece that you had from a while back. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yes. Okay. So it's so funny to look back at student work, but this was one of my big student projects that I graduated with, and it even got a Graphis award and was recognized by Brand New as student work and was awarded for those things. And so it was one of my like top projects from like 12 years ago. And it was really exciting at the time to have this as part of my portfolio and to be like, I'm entering the workforce with this project. Look how good I am, kind of a
Awarded
thing.
designer, what's up?
Yeah. And then now, like, looking at it and kind of having this like womp womp feeling of like, wow, like some of it I do like, and some of it I feel like actually stood up over the last decade. But I think some of it, there's things that I would have changed about it too. And it's for the Neon Museum. So we just picked a project to rebrand. The Neon Museum is in Las Vegas, if you don't know about it. And
No, but sounds cool.
yeah, and so I came up with all the collateral and tickets and bags and things like that, and coffee cups for their cafe, and all of the museum like collateral that would go with it. And now looking at that logo, I've like, there's so much I would change about it too. And yes, it does give off the feeling of bent neon um, and stuff like that. But the O to the N is the part that really bugs me, because now it starts to feel like a Q and there's a readability issue happening there. And so there's some that was like on the right wavelength of thought and making it feel like this neon sign that was attached to edges or attached to the top. But I think I probably would have I would have definitely changed it and created something that felt a little more lively and a little less stiff.
But that also speaks to your expertise and your growth as an artist. So I think
Yeah.
it's also a testament to the time that it was created. Like, these textural halftones that you have are also very
Mhm.
much of their time. Which, I mean, I still love a good halftone, but it's just like there was a period, back in
Mhm.
early 2010s that like halftones were hot. Um, and yeah, I can see now that you pointed out the notability of maybe the Q, but if it's any consolation, I did not think that when I first saw it. So
Oh, good.
good time.
But yeah,
But I wanted to put it next to something that's a little bit more new, because
Mhm.
you do have this relationship with product design or packaging design. And I was wondering what things you feel kind of have continued to connect through your line of experience, and what has really changed.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I would say, thinking about the brand experience before designing is something that really should play a big part in the design of the brand. And so the brand experience of Neon Museum is actually really colorful, and for whatever reason, the brand just doesn't really portray that, and you don't get a sense of what it'll be like in person. But then working on this Flora Code project, one thing that we really wanted to bring into this brand and what I thought would be something for the audience is this kind of delightful reveal on the inside of the box of all of the notes and flavors that would be in this product. So
Yeah.
there's ginger, there's a lot of floral moments to kind of give a nod to the name Flora Code. It's a probiotic that you can take daily. And so there's a little line when you open it that says your gut has been waiting for this. And so I think even copy and bringing in that human sense into the brand really helps it to come to life and to feel like a human made brand. Whereas the looking back on the left, it just says cafe. Like, what more could we say about a coffee shop or a cup of coffee or whatever it might be, or tying in neon signs into coffee too, coming up with a message or something to add even more layers to the brand and to the design itself.
Yeah, and I really want to read it because I think that's such a great talking point, and something that I could learn from is the idea that, like, when you think of branding, you think so much of like logo or color, or maybe even a design system. But it's so important to also remember that, yeah, copy and every detail is also adding to the brand with the brand language. And it's interesting that, yeah, like cafe still gives me information, but to your point, just having something that tells me even something more subtle that's unique to the brand is going to make waves.
Mhm.
Um, I also, speaking of like newer work, I wanted to actually go and highlight just this one more. I think it also is from the Flora one, and it's this really nice kind of product display with the flowers, which is nice to see, and having them kind of grow out. Do you feel like your documentation of your work has also changed over time?
Yeah. Yeah, like even seeing that neon museum like shoot, just like me being a student, putting everything on a table and trying to photograph it the best I can. I would say as a designer, it's so great to utilize other people for their strengths. And so this image, for example, was not photographed by me. I used someone and art directed this to show them the vision that I was looking for. And then same with the copy too, utilizing copywriters because I'm not a copywriter by any means. And so it really helps to lean into other people's strengths to bring the brand to life. And in this case, they understood my vision of I want flowers standing up. I want them looking like they're coming out of the boxes, kind of like this growth moment for this probiotic that's really just going to help your gut flourish kind of a thing. And so they really understood that and brought that really playful and kind of feminine sense to this brand.
It takes a team, and using a team as a benefit and not as a like, having to like navigate other people, but more
Mhm.
so like bringing them up and elevating them. So great. And then I just one more here, which is I really liked kind of this collection that you have of works and kind of having them all interact with one another. Do you want to talk a little bit about this real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So the brand did a photo shoot of all of these models using the product, and then we incorporated some of the packaging images that we used. And so this is kind of like a nice full brand at a glance moment of wild postings. Even some of the floral illustrations are in there as well. And it was really fun to think through color with the brand and this dome like shape that ends up on the packaging as well, and kind of pulling it off the packaging and creating its own little stamp or icon or moment. And then, of course, again, copy sprinkled throughout all of this to really help people understand what this is here to improve your gut flora. You deserve to be in control of your health. You deserve products that work, live life in beautiful balance. And so there's this element of beauty and science coming together in this brand and really helping people understand how to take better care of their body and essentially feeling more beautiful and more balanced.
I love your big picture of everything. Like you really are good at like taking a step back and seeing the whole thing, but then also like super zooming in and being like, this thing impacts the bigger picture, even if it's just this tiny detail.
Thank
Um,
you.
Real quick question regarding the last one, actually. And it comes from Bruce. He says, what was the thought behind shape sculptures behind the flowers?
That was kind of trying to mimic this dome like thing that was starting to become a repeat motif throughout the brand. So you kind of see a subtle dome on the little sachets and on the box. And so it's supposed to be this kind of happy place of like, now I am in balance. Now my gut is happy kind of a thing. And so it was a very subtle, like tertiary element for the brand, but kind of a fun moment to think through how can we bring some of those shapes out into this environment and this space, but in a monochromatic way. So not calling too much attention to those shapes. So there's a few other images that have some texture and more of these shapes kind of included throughout.
Yeah, like even in the one that we were also looking at, kind of behind the flora code, kind of having
Mhm.
that dome, which is just like a subconscious kind of like recognition of everything, which is
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you for adding context to that.
Yeah.
Um, there is a fun segment that we have now called 20 questions, and it's just quick questions to get to know you a little bit better. 20 quick questions. So here's just kind of a lightning round, fast questions for you. What's the best color?
Cobalt blue.
Ooh, okay. Yeah,
Very
on
nice.
brand. Serif or sans serif?
Serif.
Yeah, serif is coming back. I mean, sans serif had its moment for the last like decade, but I feel like serif is
Yeah,
is
you can
is
say a
hot
lot with the
again, which
serif.
I like to see. Although I do get in my head about serifs. Always using new fonts, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Always new fonts.
What's the worst color?
Oh, I didn't give this one much thought. I don't know, white? It's just
And
so
now,
cold
does
and
that
blue.
differ from when you're approaching design versus like, I don't know, painting your house?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, what's better, digital design or print design?
Print.
Print. 3D design or 2D design?
2D.
Form over function or function over form?
Function over form.
Grid layout or freeform?
Grid layout.
Of course. What's the best shape?
A circle.
You know what? I'm so surprised. This most everyone is saying circle. I've
Yeah.
gotten a triangle and a star are the other two ones that I've gotten, but everyone else has said circle.
Yeah.
What's the hardest thing to design?
Brochures.
Oh, I get that. Text. What's the most productive hour of the day?
The morning. First thing in the morning.
Side question, just so I don't forget it. This is not part of the 20 questions. Is everyone in your studio in the same place, or with COVID, are you guys like all over the country?
Yeah. Before COVID, we were a fully remote team. And so
Oh.
everyone finally understood that after COVID, how that works. We were using Zoom before everyone was using Zoom and
Ooh.
Slack and all of that. So
Trendsetters.
yeah, it didn't really seem to be that big of a deal to us, but a lot of people didn't get it before COVID, really.
All it took was a worldwide pandemic, but now people understand you.
Yeah, that's all it took. Simple.
Are you fueled by coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Do you put anything in your coffee?
Honey.
Honey.
Mhm.
Design with photography or design with illustration?
Photography.
What's a piece of client feedback you hear too much?
We want to keep our logo as is. I'm constantly trying to push people to change their logo along with everything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people's children. I mean, you probably have a better eye for it, but it's always going to be hard to
Yeah, it's like,
convince
you don't
people.
want to? Are you sure? Can I show you why we should change it?
How many unread emails do you have in your inbox?
0.
Ooh, inbox 0. Impressive. What's the first thing you do when you open a new document?
Put music on.
Ooh. One long project or a bunch of tiny projects?
One long project.
Favorite art class you ever took?
Color theory.
Oh, good. I should have taken the color theory. It was so hard to get into, and I never got into it, but I wish I would have.
It's kind of mind-blowing, and I still use it today to, like, with printing and helping clients
Oh,
understand
clearly.
something. It's like, this is just color theory happening right here.
What's the best background noise for work?
Podcasts.
Ooh, listening to anything good in particular lately?
I love all of the, like, celebrity ones. So, like,
Yeah.
celebrity gossip or like the armchair expert, or when they're interviewing celebrities, just kind of nice conversations happening in the background.
As a side note, Julia Louis-Dreyfus has her own podcast now, and she's interviewing a bunch of older women and
Ooh.
their experience of like how it's harder to stay relevant as a woman as you get older than as a man when you get older.
Wow, I should look into
Yeah.
that.
And
That sounds
yeah, we'll talk
perfect.
about your content series in just a second, which I can definitely see parallels for. And then, sorry, your last question: do you use Photoshop or Illustrator more frequently?
Illustrator.
Illustrator. That makes sense. You got to scale all those logos, right?
Yeah.
Wade's also excited about the color theory hype in the chat. He says that. And he also wants you to consider illustration for design rather than photography. Over on YouTube, Saving Worlds and Stuff wants to know if you have a favorite font.
Oh, that's a good one.
You're like, what day is it?
What was that?
You're like, what day is it?
Yeah. I mean, I did a YouTube video where I covered 15 of the greatest fonts of all time, and I included like 8 serifs and like 7 sans serifs or something like that. So I kind of tried to split it evenly. And I really leaned into a lot of the serifs, but I think some sands that I really like, I mean, circular is like such a beautiful sans. It's got that curvature that just like makes it feel a little more human. Um, and then like Times Now, that's like a pretty good version of Times New Roman that, can be very versatile for designs and stuff like that.
Everyone is like feverishly taking notes now, being like, these are the only ones I will use.
Yeah.
Amber says they're good. But yeah, no, I know we talked a little bit about that podcast. So I think that'd be a great time to do a little bit of art talk because you have a really cool series about women. So generally in this segment, we talk about people that inspire you or people that are influential to your work. But I know you in particular have a really cool series on Instagram that is exploring different women designers you should know. And you had mentioned one in particular, Bia, and I thought that who's better to explain it than yourself? So I was just going to actually cue up that post.
Great.
Women designers you should know, part 4. Bia.
Wait, did that sound really weird to you, or was it just on my
Like
end?
slowed down by like 50%.
I don't know why it did that. You don't sound like that. Don't worry about that. As I try to
Really
find a
funny.
fix for that, do you want to just kind of explain why
Yeah.
you came up with this series and how it came to be?
Yeah. I've been doing this series on Instagram and TikTok. It's called Women Designers You Should Know. I've covered about 16 women so far, and it stemmed from a place of wanting to know more about women in history in graphic design in particular, because we always hear about Paul Rand and Saul Bass and Massimo Vignelli and, Milton Glaser and like all of these greats that we aspire to be like and we learn a lot about in school. But those same textbooks don't really have a lot of women. And so it came from a place of what other women are out there or were out there who paved the way for us that we just aren't talking about. And so it's mostly leaning into women who came before us, kind of a thing, and who've been designing way back when. And one of my favorites that I discovered from doing this series was Bea Feitler. I think the proper way is to say Bea because she's Brazilian and she moved to New York to study design, and she worked a lot in editorial magazines like in Vogue, or no, I don't think she did Vogue, but she did Harper's Bazaar. She did Ms. Magazine with Gloria Steinem. She worked on 17. And yeah, here's more of the series too, where it's just like a 1-minute video trying to pull together as much of their iconic work as possible and giving like a really good quick overview of who this person was and what they did and their significance.
All right. Well, then let's try this. Let's do take 2. See if we actually have your real sounding voice.
Okay.
There we go.
Bea Feitler is a Brazilian graphic designer and one of the greatest art directors of the 20th century. She went to school at Parsons and went on to design and art direct for magazines like Harper's Bazaar, Ms. Magazine, which was founded by Gloria Steinem, Rolling Stone, and Vanity Fair. Her work was iconic in the 60s and 70s, and she had the ability to take something ordinary and transform it into something special. She would say, a magazine should flow. It should have rhythm. You can't look at one page alone. You have to visualize what comes before and after. She also fought hard for women's rights in the industry, including higher salaries and design credit. She had the ability to showcase controversial messages about feminism and politics through witty designs. Her final project before dying of cancer at age 44 was a vibrant cover redesign of a revived Vanity Fair magazine. Follow for more from this series, Women Designers You Should Know, Part 4.
All right. Awesome work.
Thank
and
you.
I love how concise it is, but also how much you have, and also how you really incorporate a lot of the visual imagery that you just get like a really big overview. Once again, big picture stuff to be able to see. But prior to this, you had never really heard of Bea before, right?
Yeah. And it was one of those things where I feel like I'm getting as much out of this as everyone else watching it too, is or maybe even more so, because after I do all this research, it's a lot of really great inspiration I'm coming across, and I plan on growing with it too, and highlighting even more women, going into different design disciplines, exploring industrial design and architecture and furniture design, and maybe even doing a podcast with it. That's kind of where my head's at with all of that.
Sign me up. I would definitely listen to that. It's
Good.
kind of the sort of stuff that like I feel there is a large group of people that want to learn about that, but there isn't really an online presence entirely that gives you good, concise information while also like, still exploring things that, aren't the same people over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
So that would be very cool. I know that you mentioned that you wanted to go through a lot of pieces of inspiration, so I kind of want to give you the reins for a little bit.
Okay.
You want to talk a little bit about the things that inspire you?
Yeah.
And also, guys, I would love to sit here and play so many more of these. There's so many good ones, but I want to make sure that Amber has plenty of time. So make sure you do yourself a service and you check her stuff out on Instagram and on TikTok. Yeah, it should be great. All right, so I can see that you shared your screen. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop on there for you. And what are we looking at?
Okay, so I've got about 10 or so different resources that I thought might be helpful for other designers to see, and to see where I've found some of my own inspiration or resources for my own design. So I would say one of the best resources that a designer could have is typography and their collection of type, and knowing where to find really good type. And so there's actually two sites here, Type Foundries, and then I'll wait for that to load, Type Foundry directory. And it actually lists in alphabetical order all of these different type foundries. And I like that they have even these different checkboxes to show which ones have trial fonts, because trial fonts are a big part of my process in incorporating a couple of test fonts in different design directions and seeing which ones the client really likes. And then we send them the links to purchase the license for those fonts. And so it's a really helpful part of this process of discovering new typography, using typography that can really become an iconic part of a specific brand. And having all of this in one place is really nice to just kind of bounce through site to site and to see which of these foundries and which fonts are really going to be the perfect fit for your project.
And so this is kind of how you kind of keep organized, or at least have a high level view of a bunch of different things and navigate.
Yeah, I used to organize it myself in my bookmarks, and I was like, look, someone's done all this work for me. I don't have to do this anymore.
Work smarter, not harder,
Yeah. The next resource that I wanted to show is if you're a branding designer, Branding Style Guides, this site that has a whole archive of different style guides. Here's PayPal's. There's some old ones in here, and new ones, most popular, McDonald's, Coca-Cola. It's like really interesting to see what other big brands are doing in terms of style guides. And you can literally just like click through their style guide.
Brand books?
What was that?
Does Nice People also create brand books for?
Yeah. And so like this is a really helpful tool to see, okay, and then there's even online guidelines too. We don't do this as much, but it's kind of fun to see like, okay, Instacart did a recent rebrand, and they have a whole online guide that their entire internal team references. So it's kind of cool to see what other people are doing with those things.
My favorite page of any brand guidelines is when the designer gets to tell you what not to do with the logo.
Don't flash it.
Do some wild things.
Don't use neon colors.
Yeah.
Like, meh. Someone should do like an animated version of that.
Right.
And then another resource, one thing that I think we forget about all the time is Flickr is still there and it's still popping, and it did not die on us, you guys. And there are so many old collections on here of ephemera and things that people have scanned and taken pictures of. And I find this so helpful when trying to think of like a fresh new way to do a logo, or looking at very unique letters in some of this stuff too. Like, wow, look at that M, and like the way that it just kind of stacks down. And that's a really interesting M. How can I bring that inspiration into this brand that starts with an M that I'm going to work on, kind of a thing? So it's stuff like that where I think kind of referencing old stuff is really helpful. There's even this one that has MCM logos. So like really
cool.
old graphic, kind of exciting shape driven logos too. And so this stuff really excites me as well. Here's a better view of it.
Back in college, my roommate, he was a design major. He actually had like a bunch of old like yellow pages from I think like the 60s
Oh,
or
wow.
50s.
Okay.
And he would flip through them to look for different like insignias and logos that he thought were cool. And he would like pull the wildest stuff and be like, oh, this is from, a plumber in like Ontario. But, this is obviously something they did back in, 1960.
Yeah.
So looking to the past for inspiration is such a great piece of advice.
Yeah, because like some of this stuff is so iconic and it's lasted for 50 years. Like you don't look at this and think, oh, this is so dated. I mean, some of
Right.
it kind of, but for the most part, it's nice to be inspired by something that has stood the test of time and it's very timeless feeling, and to think, okay, what made it timeless and how can I create a timeless logo today?
Right.
Same with logo archive. So it's kind of along the same threads of logo inspiration and collections. There's this resource that's pretty similar to that Flickr collection, where it's even more documentation on these old vintage logos. And then it's a really great search tool too. So like if I wanted to look up bird logos,
Oh, cool.
then it can show me all of these old bird logos and really interesting shapes and different kinds of birds, and
Such a
the
cute
things
flamingo.
they're doing with this. Yeah. So this is a very valuable tool. This one's actually a paid account, so that's something to keep in mind. But if you have the means, it's kind of fun, or you can hop in and out depending on the project that you need
I
it
use
for.
Noun Project a lot of times for similar stuff,
Yeah.
where I'll
Oh,
just get
Noun
like a
Project is
generic
great.
idea.
Yeah. Same with Logo Lounge. I mean, I'm sure maybe a lot of you already know about this, but Logo Lounge has a lot of different logos to look through. And you can search by topic. Looks like I'm not logged in, but you can even narrow it down by ones that made it in the logo book, the Logo Lounge book, or ones that have been voted by like curators and things like that, or just like anything and everything, to see what else is out there and to see which ones to cross off of, like, okay, this has been done before, this has been done before, or to kind of explore and see if your idea has been done. I know that feels like a common question that people ask, like, has anyone seen this out there? So it's kind of nice to cross-reference with stuff like that.
Right.
And then taking a little bit of a departure into this Vogue archive. So this is really cool because you can go way back to the 50s and 60s and browse through old versions of Vogue.
That's really cool.
And like what's really fun about this is like seeing the typography of the time and illustrations of the time, and layouts. And if you're very much, I mean, I think a lot of this layout stuff can be very applicable to even website design if you're not actually in editorial design. And one thing that I discovered when I was doing this too was I can use my LA Public Library card to access archives like this too. And so
Wow,
sometimes,
good to know.
yeah,
Did not know
sometimes your
that.
public library card like gives you more access to other collections and archives like this.
Also, I back in college, we would go through their different archives with like pulling the actual things. And another thing that I would have a lot of fun with is just reading the articles and also reading the advertisements, because the advertisements were literally like an entire page article where I'm like, why are you giving me so
Yeah.
much information to buy this Volkswagen? Like,
Mhm.
just tell me to buy the car. I don't need to know like this whole thing.
Yeah, that's impressive. The attention span back in the day,
Yeah.
man.
That said,
Um,
I'm nostalgic for a time where there was illustrations on the front of magazines, but
yeah,
I also understand that doesn't necessarily make as much sense anymore.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, it is kind of fun to see stuff like that. Um, Another resource or source of inspiration. I mean, I'm kind of going into this world of like, what can we do outside of Pinterest?
Hmm.
And good old fashioned books, collecting design books is like a constant goal of mine. I have this like vintage menu book from Toshin Books that goes into that has really great typography inspiration from all of these vintage menus.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
and so, like, I even have this collection that I've kind of put together on Bookshop, where there's these really good design education ones, this graphic design, like going by decade or era is really cool. There's a whole series of that, and then same with inspiration books too, like logo inspiration books and typography throughout history and ads. And oh, yeah, here's the menu design. They have one in Europe and they have one in America,
That's
old
cool.
wood type. So, stuff like this that you can't find on Pinterest or Instagram helps level up your space and like your inspiration and your toolbox and helps you to
And it's
come
nice
up
to
with
step away from a
more
screen,
different stuff. What was that?
It's nice to step away from a screen and
Yeah.
flip through a book and just kind of like give yourself the space to really focus on something rather than just like mindlessly scrolling and then getting
Yeah.
distracted by something.
Like if I'm burnt out or having a creative block, sometimes just going to the books that I have and going through them and page like thumbing through them all of a sudden gives me like the boost that I needed in that moment to be like, I got this, I can do this, I'm gonna forge ahead, you know?
Yeah, I have to play the thing. There you go. That's our burnout section.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
Burnout.
awards.
But then, yeah, I mean, some quick other ones, of course, awards. I reference this all the time for websites. Dribble is a really great reference to that might not always show up on Instagram or Pinterest. And then, of course, Behance. I look through
Woohoo.
this all the time too. And then, last but not least, Pinterest. And I do have a lot of saved pins on here that I go back to again and again. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I mean, that's a huge collection of different resources. I have a few now that I need to write down. I really
Yeah.
like the Type Foundry directory
Yeah.
and the Logo Lounge too. I'm also, or what was the one right before Logo Lounge
Local
that you said was a
archive.
paid service? That's
Yeah.
Logo Archive. Okay, cool. And also got to see if Vogue takes my Brooklyn
Yeah.
library card. I'm sure
Yeah,
they do.
or look at your Brooklyn Library account and see what collections they have through your card, and then
Oh
you
yeah.
can just access those.
Wade was reminiscing over scrolling through his microfiche, which I mean, I guess I don't know what that word is, but I'm guessing that's like the scanner thing that you would flip through the slides of, right?
Oh,
Um,
microsites?
but
Or, yeah,
I don't know.
I
So we
think
only have a
that's
few
before our
minutes left.
time.
One of the things that we do really like to talk about, or it's like a new segment at least, is called Next Question. And that's when we have the previous guest ask the next guest something, and then you ask something for the next guest as well. Next question. So, without knowing who necessarily was last, but just having a question from the dark, The last guest wanted to know, what is an animal that best represents your spirit?
Oh. Hmm. Maybe a cat?
A cat? Why is that? Are you nocturnal?
Well, sometimes I am. I don't know. That's a really hard question. I think the nice thing about cats is they kind of just do their own thing. So that might be, and they're pretty independent. So I would say those two things are probably the reason why I feel a little more like a cat.
I'm there for it. I've locked mine out of the room for this whole show, and he's been screaming through the door.
Uh,
Now it's your turn. Do you have a question for the next guest?
okay, let me see. I thought of this earlier and then now I completely forgot what my question would be, but I would say um if you could work with any like one material. So I guess this is assuming that they're a packaging designer. If you had to work with one material in packaging for the rest of your design career, what material would you work with?
All right. I'm
Like
excited to
plastic,
see what it is.
aluminum, paper, I don't know,
Yeah,
anything.
some people like to answer their own questions, other people are like, that's not the segment. But do you have an answer to your own question?
Um, hmm. No, I don't. Maybe paper.
Maybe
I
paper.
mean, yeah.
Paper has a
But
lot of versatility.
yeah, it does. A lot's happening with aluminum lately too, which is kind of fun. But how do you make an aluminum box?
I'm also going to quote you on that. A lot's been happening with aluminum.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we just have a few minutes left, but I did want to actually touch real quick on one of my favorite parts, which is what's in your sketchbook.
Ooh, what's in your sketchbook?
And thank you so much for sharing these with us. This is just a little look into the back end of your work process. Can you tell us a little bit about this collection of logos that are kind of being
Yeah.
experimented with?
This is for a fashion brand in Kuwait called Shara. And it's just exploring type and especially a like C monogram or CH monogram, which was something that the client really wanted, especially for a fashion brand. It made a lot of sense. And so yeah, it's just about like iterate, like explore, copy and paste, now try to modify that to the next thing, copy and paste, now modify that to the next thing. It's kind of like you don't really know what you're doing in the process until you just like put it all out there and then step back. And so I think that's kind of the fun thing is when you're in this space and exploring, like take off your creative director hat, your curation hat, or whatever is the thing that's telling you what's good and what's not good, and just create and create and create until you're done with that. And then step back and then explore, okay, what really was working, what wasn't working, what do I like the best from here, and then go from there to starting to like put that presentation together and to really choose which directions you want to show.
Yeah, well said. I learned the iteration thing from Droplin a little bit ago, and it's changed my life. I don't always remember to do it, but when I do, it makes things so much easier because it's like you want to go back to something that you thought you gave up on, but you're like, wait, I could actually bring this into this iteration, and rather than having to recreate it, you can just grab it. So
Yeah,
it's cool to
it's
see.
where your best work comes from.
But thank you so much for coming on the show. Time flew. We could talk for hours and hours more,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, we're going to get cut off. But thank you so much for coming on. Make sure you guys check out Nice People on YouTube because you're starting up your YouTube channel.
Mhm.
And then just Amber AC on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
TikTok.
nice people on TikTok, but
Nice
yeah.
People on TikTok. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good
Yeah.
rest of your day, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you. This was fun.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for all our guests that came on. Thank you for everyone that was in the chat and hanging out today and asking great questions. Once again, my name is Ryan Selvy. We'll be back again with some Offset tomorrow, but there's still some Adobe Live ahead today. So make sure you stay tuned if you're sticking around watching live. Thank you to Wade for moderating. And thank you to Barbara and Ultimate Empire over on YouTube and everybody over on Behance. It's been a pleasure as always. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all right here tomorrow. Thanks for watching.